What is up, y'all? It's your boy Aniki coming at you with the My Hero Academia Chapter 319 review. It is finally here. They've converged upon Deku. We've been talking about this for a while. How, with all the clues, the Bunny Man mythology, and all these other random factors that if you've been tracking through the story, you've been like, well, there's only a matter of time before at least Bakugo is able to track him down. So, this inevitability, here we are. But, I'm going to start with the opening color page just because those of us who have been discussing for a while, or if you've been watching the channel for a while, we had already talked about the lack of Ida, Shoto, and Tokoyami reactions, as well as Bakugo reactions when the letter first came. So sure enough, that was just Horikoshi letting us know that when we got to see their reaction, it would be in conjunction with an actual movement within the plot. So sure enough, we get to see Bakugo was fed up with it, felt disrespected, and they all agreed that they would try to find out where he was. And we get the confirmation that their whole mentors have been pretty out on the loop, especially concerning when you think about the way Endeavor and Shoto were interacting with each other. We get confirmation that they are still technically Class 1A. A lot of people had started calling them Class 2A. Well, nope, too bad. They're still 1A. They're still technically first year. And that's, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Rip Shinso streams. Confirmation of Denim Head as the official nickname for Genist. Spoonbill is consistent with what he's called Hawks before. The reality is that Bakugo classifies this as a worst case scenario for Deku, and from what we've seen of his psyche and the way it's been degrading, I definitely agree with that. Just like when Bakugo was like, this is turning into a stamina battle and Deku can't keep breaking his limbs, so we need to get in there. This is constantly Bakugo acknowledging and understanding what makes Izuku tick and what makes him weak and what makes him strong and how those characteristics manifest themselves. Now, when Kirishima gets up to bat and he wants to know how he's going to get in touch with the top three because they've been keeping it under wraps about what All Might's been up to, he just vanished as far as everybody else knows. Bakugo, of course, wagers that he's the one who slipped the notes to them, and Ochako suggests that they utilize the UA Alumni Association, aka the principal, to corral Endeavor into an office meeting and force his hand on information. However, that being said, Bakugo did dress up nicely for the part, including making sure to actually wear his tie and button up his blazer in formal fashion wear. Now, Nezu saying he heard the children out and he was approving of them going to leave the school compound, on one level seems like him just being sympathetic. I've been leaning towards Nezu being a traitor. I think the war arc pretty much solidified that, and so I think this is more over his subconscious programming that he would have picked up while being experimented on, taking over and helping him create vulnerability at UA, but also so that he would know exactly who was going to go after him, because he figured out who the best team to get Deku to capture him for All For One would be, just like how they wanted All For One wants it to capture Eraserhead back in the day, if you've read Vigilantes. Now, one of the first things Shoto does confront Endeavor over is their lack of communication and the fact that they haven't gone after Toya, and they're supposed to be working together, and that he's working with Deku though, and it doesn't make sense. And Bakugo confronts Endeavor on his lack of understanding of who the people he's relying on actually is. And I think it's kind of important to note that a lot of the people have been focused on Deku doing these things and they feel like they don't have an option. But in this case, I think Endeavor is finally realizing and factoring in that he cannot afford to sacrifice another child. He's already sacrificed Toya, he sacrificed Shoto's childhood. He doesn't feel comfortable sacrificing another child anymore. And I think that's the importance of him more or less surrendering his phone to the children, whether he threw it or let them capture it or they smacked it out of his hand. Whatever the case may be, I think that's why he doesn't try to stop them from going after him. They've decided that no matter what, Midoriya needs to be supported, and that the burden of One For All is one that he doesn't need to carry alone, because it is one burden for all heroes to carry. See what I mean? Horikoshi's madman. Now, and one of the most important things is that Deku's been talking about how he's going to have them smiling again, and everybody's going to be happy, and they're straight up saying that would never work in a world where Deku is carrying all the burden alone. You're not going to create a world where I can smile by sacrificing everything in your own physical well-being and your health and your sanity and eventually your life. for me. That's not going to create the happiness for the people around you. And that's something that All Might and Deku need to figure out. That's something that I think the second user, more than any other user, understood, because he's the one who had a platoon. Whereas Nana sacrificed her personal life and the happiness of her child, and then only in death and as a vestige did she see just how horribly that sacrifice impacted her family. We don't get the backstories of Banjo or any of the other ones like that, but you better believe that Shinomori likely hurt some people disappearing for 18 years, or more like 13 to 14 years, and then finding Banjo, whatever. All these things are coming to play with One For All users not realizing that if they build up an environment around them, they can do it. More than likely, the second and third user's departure was the friendliest, most amicable goodbye, because it was likely him passing it on before heading off to take a final fight with All For One, but making sure that if he died, the third user would still have it. Because Fajin plus One For All is actually a pretty good combination. The third probably had access to firepower on par with the fourth to fifth user just because of that nature. Anyway. With Enji being like very aware of how dangerous it is, Nezu once again makes it a point to kind of push the issue and enable the children to take this risk and go after. So it's like, and Nezu enabled Deku going out there, but now he's going to make it a point to help him get brought back. And it seems to me that All For One and Nezu's mindset is potentially that it's worth saving more of his henchmen and just getting him corralled, because the other thing is, as soon as they get back, the UA barrier, which is mentioned in this chapter by Nezu, can be used to keep them out and hold the citizens hostage until they turn Deku in, or until All For One arrives, and we end up with a situation like that. So that whole corralling everybody into one spot and creating a potential easy strike zone has been there for a while. So it's kind of building up. It definitely feels like this is just what's being set up here. The Chekhov's gun, everything's all lined up, ready to go. And we finally get confirmation, once we do, that they have actually brought every member of Class 1A. I know some people thought Aoyama was missing. However, he can be seen in the back, very faintly between Koda and the Jiro spot. You can tell because it's like the little sparkly cape. So that adds up everybody being there. The 20th person obviously being Deku, who's sitting amongst the crowd of people as they all flee. We see that Momo can make miniature Iron Maiden, so they got that locked down. Bakugo is still going by Great Explosion, Murder got Dynamite, and all the civilians run away immediately, trying to get out. And Deku starts preparing to leave. He's putting the mask back on. Ochako's like tries to lead with a grounded point of, hey, we care about you, we're worried about you, your safety matters. And then Deku is just kind of like, nope, get away. They're reaching out to him. And Bakugo actually goes ahead to mock him and says, that's really inspiring and all. And like, yeah, we get it. You're the One For All successor, but you're not living up to your ideals. And I've seen some people be very upset about Bakugo just being like on the point and straight to the point about this. But the reality is that nobody who's tried to be nice to Deku, there is no nice way to tell someone you're being a hypocrite and ignoring your ideology in order to carry on in the behavior that you're manifesting. There's no nice way to say that. There's no polite way to tell someone they're being a hypocrite. You just kind of got to bite down and do it. And Deku says that he's doing this for the smiles of everyone else, and that they need to get out of their way. And we've talked about this before. The reason Deku's running around alone is because All Might ran around alone. Because All Might was the one who, like, solo head-on confronted the great darkness of All For One. He had to do that during the arc. That's what the One For All was for. He's a puppet for One For All. It's been built into his name of Izuku Midoriya. That's one of the characters, is a puppet. He's just filled, and that's all he exists for in his mind. He's just there to be the next All Might, to represent him. And that's why I seen him torn down, his mask that's supposed to represent a fake smile, looking like broken teeth as he's corroded. That's the power of the scene. And it's worth noting that this is, again, the beginning of the last act, the third act, the final stretch of the story. And at Provisional License Exam, that was the first arc of the Rise of the Villain saga that culminated with Deku vs. Kacchan 2. This was, once again, them taking an exam where Deku performed better in that exam than Bakugo did. And, he had to really come to terms with Deku effectively having more of a heroic heart, or being more adept at him than him at something. But then you go back and then you think back to the battle training arc, and again, Deku manages to out-strategize Bakugo. But this time, that was when Bakugo and Ida were paired up, and they didn't really work together as a team, but now you see them coming together, agreeing to work together. Stuff that was kind of emphasized and hinted at during the Paranormal Liberation War arc, because if you remember, Ida was willing to save Bakugo and work together with him, but did try to advise him to get to safety. Ochako being the original partner that Deku's had by his side since he walked into UA. Since he was trying to walk up the steps of UA, Ochako's been by his side. So we've got this original 3 people who've been in the Nexus, in the background, building up Deku from Season 1, from those battle training arcs, from Provisional License Exam now. And now we come to this, the first arc of the 3rd act again with Deku vs. Kacchan 3 happening, but this time with Bakugo leading a team, and this time Bakugo to a certain degree is outperforming Deku in what it means to be a hero. He gets the jump on Despot, make sure to take him out in one blow without harming any civilians. He's working together with his team and accepting their help. He's trying to still win, and yeah, he's still talking trash because that's part of how he is as a hero, but that's what he does, and that's still not stopping him from working together with people. And furthermore, one of the things that emphasize the unity and the growth of Bakugo and this teamwork and this communion and this fellowship within the class is that when you look at that last page, you can actually see that Ida has his hand on Bakugo's back, and Bakugo isn't shrugging it off. It's just like you can see that Bakugo makes it a point to grab Shota by the shoulder when he's about to yell at Endeavor and really start going off to keep him calm and comforted. There's a certain, especially utilizing Bakugo as this vocal point, this, if you will, this transport of this idea. The reason for this is that if you remember, Bakugo doesn't let All Might hug him. He wouldn't let All Might pat his head after they took down Cider House. He doesn't indulge in physical affection. When Endeavor hugged him and Natsuo at the same time, he slid out of that hug. Natsuo stayed in that hug longer than him, and Natsuo used to get beaten by, well, actually he didn't get beaten by Endeavor, but that's a whole other topic. Now, if Bakugo can come through all of that and like constantly show us that physical contact is bad, and then in this chapter when he's working with Class 1A to go ahead and save Deku and allow them to touch him, that's the growth of his progression, his ability to actually grow and be one with the class and them to all work together as a team. It's especially important to note that even Kaminari said his personality was like flaming garbage back during the USJ arc, so this isn't just his progress, but them all coming together, and now they're going to face Deku down. Now this could go like the end of Provisional License Exam where they got introduced to Mirio and he folded 18 of Class 1A by himself, but it was important to note that Shota wasn't and Bakugo weren't involved in that fight. Maybe something else could have happened if 2 more of the big 3 were there to fight Mirio. We don't know that, and we don't know that Deku's necessarily 100% faster than Ida either. It's important to note that like all of Deku's combat skills, the main things that drive him are based off the 3 people in that last page. Ida has been helping him every step of the way with his shoot style. Ochako helped him actually learn his aerial mobility. Bakugo is the one he bases a lot of his Air Force Smash mobility on, in addition to his hand-to-hand combat and the way he approaches these things. So he's been working with these characters. The only thing that he has as a trump card is Foe 100% and Fajin, and if he uses that on them, that's going to cause some serious damage. So if Deku goes that hard, what's he going to do and who's he going to be hitting? Because busting out a Foe 100% smash against Class 1A doesn't seem like a step Deku needs to be taking, but it's definitely one I could see him making if he's that desperate to keep them away. But what that would have as a repercussion on the story, I don't have the full details of because I'm not Horikoshi, but it's definitely worth noting that this would objectively bench a couple people if they got hit with the 100% smash. There's not a lot of characters here who I think can take it, and we might even get some of the other ones thinned out who have spent a little less time on screen being important, but we'll see how that goes. Like, even though Koda was one of the people who jumped forward and said he wanted to help Deku, Koda is also somebody who doesn't really fit into this matchup, or like his power set and his abilities don't seem the most useful here, so I could see him kind of getting benched, Aoyama getting taken down. Some of these characters I could see getting put down a little faster early just so that we like zero in on those main cast again, the ones who's really been working with Deku this whole time and who have been there through the hardest things. This is a battle at Kamino, and as it was pointed out to me by somebody on Twitter, Yes, the All Might statue's in the background, and he is not there. But the new symbol that will take over and be the symbol of peace is Class 1A. Deku leading them, his leadership, Bakugo's leadership, them being the next generation and working together, not as one individual elevated to be better than everyone else, but as a group of people working towards the betterment of another group of people. That's what will make Class 1A great. That's what will allow them to be the greatest heroes. That's what will push them all to a new level. That's what will allow them to go beyond the limits of the previous systems that the world had. That's what will help Hero Society, Quirk Society start to become healed. The idea of the glorification of one particular hero over all others, leading to stagnation, will be gone. Endeavor wasn't trying to help make people be complacent, but when you think about the fact that he became the number 2 hero and nobody else got to that number until he became number 1, you better believe there's some people who became complacent, who became, the best I could get is bronze. I'm not worried about that. Think about how casually Snipe seemed okay with not being the best shooter around when his quirk literally lets him home in on people, so he should be the best shooter. It's kind of fascinating the impact that like having such high caliber leaders ended up having on them. But in this case, they've always used and grown up next to these people. So there's a bunch of heroes here who, no matter how outpaced they get in DC or whatever you want to look at for stats, they'll have known Deku, Bakugo, Shoto, Tokoyami, Ida from the time they were young. They're going to still be motivated to do work and fight alongside their allies, their brothers, sisters, whatever, that they've grown up with. And that's what's going to keep these heroes through thick and thin, through blood and through water, through trials, through triumph and terror. That's what keeps them together. Class 1A has been struggling to deal with getting to have normal classes since May of year 1. What's a couple more disasters? That's what they're here to do, and that's what they're going to confront. Hope you guys enjoyed this chapter and this video. Let me know what you guys think down below, how you felt about all these interactions, and whether or not you feel like this is setting up Nezu's House of Horrors, where they're going to have to come back and break into UA because Nezu's going to secretly be a traitor. How do you guys feel about this? Let me know. Always remember that on Sundays we have the Church of MHA podcast. I did a special feature on Axel Blaze's podcast if you want to check that out, talking about manga and anime production. This week's episode of the Church actually had Ethan Kane on, who's someone who's worked in the animation industry, and he got to talk about his own production pipelines and experiences and the very rates that people are getting paid over in Japan compared to what he's been gotten to experience for the lower quality work, etc. So these are all the kinds of topics that interest you, then you might want to check out the Church of MHA stream for this week too. I'm Aniki, and I'm out.